Hey guys, it's Trafotin. In the world of Android, you get a rare privilege from any other mobile operating system, and it's installing custom app stores. One of the most popular is an app store called F-Droid, which is a free and open source app store with lots of great apps that you can download, and it's also one of the last holdouts as an alternative to the Google Play Store. And if you use an alternative Android ROM or operating system, F-Droid is probably one of your primary ways to obtain apps. One of the best things about F-Droid is it provides discoverability for apps that you've probably never heard of. An app that I've used for quite a bit over the past year and a half now is an app called Stock Widgets by Pareem Nerval. It's a very simple stock portfolio tracker, and it gets very frequent updates, and it's an app that I never would have known about were it not for F-Droid. This also leads to the creation of new apps, like the Mastodon client Moshidon, which I found actually works the best for me, or the podcasting app AntennaPod, and both of them are absolutely fantastic. And it's also apps that are just too saucy for the Google Play Store, like OpenPods, which allows Android devices to interface with AirPods, which is banned from the Google Play Store for some reason. I don't exactly know why. They also provide you a framework for other providers to make their own F-Droid repositories. Things like the password manager Bitwarden, where you can visit their website, click on a link, and it will add you a server where you can connect to it, and then you can download all recent updates to the Bitwarden app, completely independent of the Play Store or F-Droid. Now this is great, but you've probably saw the title of this video, because I have a lot of reservations and concerns, some of which are external, but some of which are just genuine concern about the state of F-Droid and the processes in between. Now, one of the things I intentionally did not go over in the opening segment was how to install F-Droid, so why don't we do that right now? The first thing we need to do to download F-Droid is you go to their website, you tap the download button, tap past the warnings of the Google Play Store and probably your Android operating system, and now this is where we get into our first problem. The default build of F-Droid is not able to update apps automatically because they target compatibility of phones running older versions of Android. While I am sympathetic to people running older devices, either because they live in a developing nation or for budgetary reasons, if a smaller project did the same thing that F-Droid did, I would probably not use that project because they aren't keeping stuff up to date. But this goes beyond that. And this just made the F-Droid installation process even more convoluted than it needed to be, because then people were like, well, I guess we need to turn to forks that target newer versions of Android, like things like NeoStore. But the problem with using alternative F-Droid clients is it introduces another party into the mix that you have to trust. There is a mitigation for this though, where after you download F-Droid, one of the first things you need to do is you need to download an alternate F-Droid client that is made by the F-Droid team called F-Droid Basic, which is designed to target modern versions of Android. I think it's commendable that F-Droid provides means for people to host their own repositories and provides repositories for their own store. But F-Droid's own store also has a lot of problems. Because while I think F-Droid provides great discoverability for apps that you might learn about, many of the applications on F-Droid are totally out of date. So, the stock widget app that I brought up? The stock widget page claims that the app was updated weeks ago. But if you visit the GitHub repository, you will see that the app is frequently getting updated, in some cases, like within a margin of days. And this is not the only app that does this. There are many other popular apps that do the exact same thing. No other service that I know distributes an outdated version of an executable that prompts you to get updates after you installed it other than F-Droid. No other app store has trouble keeping their own apps up to date. It's disrespectful to developers when you can't roll out the apps that they made and force everyone to wait for some sort of review process, which ends up going through most of the time because everything was open source anyway, because that's the whole freaking point of F-Droid. The key idea that I want to drive home is F-Droid isn't just an app store. F-Droid is repeating the exact same problems that Linux distributions do. Now, this might sound harsh, but there are multiple instances of F-Droid acting as an arbiter for what apps people choose to use or even are allowed to see. The first example of this is what qualifies as an anti-feature. In the case of the mapping application Organic Maps, which I would argue is probably the best free and open source mapping app available not just on Android, but probably on iPhone as well. However, Organic Maps on F-Droid is branded with a non-free flag because the mapping data is proprietary binaries, even though the code is free to review. And there shouldn't be a licensing concern because OpenStreetMap is publicly published, publicly editable, freely distributable as long as you give credit to the authors. That sounds like open source to me, but apparently it's not enough for F-Droid. If someone at F-Droid cared so much about this proprietary blob nonsense, why would they even list the application to begin with? Doesn't this violate the ethos of F-Droid? Clearly they thought it was okay if they decided to include it. And the side effect of F-Droid focusing on nonsensical licensing means that apps are being dragged through the mud, being marked as having anti-features, when the reality is some people may not even learn about these apps, or scare people out of downloading these apps, or hides them in the name of licensing fears, when they could be listing in their app store description something like permissions. And for the record, I believe that an app store reserves the right to platform an app or not. But if the same app store will platform you and shame you for not following their lifestyle, I don't even know what to say at that point. The other problem was a more recent example on F-Droid, where all Bible and Quran apps were marked as content that should not be publicized or visible everywhere. F-Droid, if it shouldn't be publicized or visible everywhere, why don't you take the app down? Why are we going through this? But what follows this warning is the most asinine thing I have ever seen in an app store. The tag is also put along with the text, promotes porn and violent content. Now I know some Christian or Muslim's gonna crucify me, haha, get it? But violent contents recounting war, especially in the Bible or the Quran, okay, fine. I can understand why someone would come to that conclusion. I can also understand that the flag is probably very complicated. We don't want to use blanket English-centric terms like not safe for work or NSFW. However, what I cannot understand is labeling the Quran and the Bible as promoting porn. I am sorry, two of the most traditionally puritanical religions on planet Earth promote porn? That's not even the worst of it. The worst part is they removed this tag, but they only did so after fascist weirdos on Twitter came and started complaining. And they dove into that message thread and started citing the Bible and Quran out of context to support their ideas. And this isn't even mentioning the fact that the Play Store, the Apple App Store, and almost every single Linux distribution on planet Earth don't stoop to the low of labeling the Bible and the Quran as not safe for work. So congratulations, F-Droid. You angered the belief of two major world religions. So that's 2/3 of the population right there. And you also only changed course to cave to fascist weirdos on Twitter. And you also believe that you have the right to decide what apps are visible by default to others. Now, unfortunately, I don't think I am the first one to bring up these issues. The worst part about the situation is that there are apps that are stuck on F-Droid because of F-Droid's historical significance, and they have not been made available through other means. You know that podcasting app, AntennaPod, that I brought up? Yeah, they're only available on F-Droid. You can't download these apps from another source except from the Google Play Store. And it's very similar to popular applications being prominently advertised on F-Droid. Now, I don't want these apps to be available just on F-Droid. I want these apps to be available on stores beyond F-Droid. And unfortunately, this creates a chicken or egg problem. Because if the way that F-Droid's going to do about it is hostile to the developer by not keeping the developer's own applications up to date, and is being very anti-user in the name of some sort of FOSS purity test, this just sounds like plain old gatekeeping to me. And the irony is F-Droid talks big game about the injustice of Google locking down their ecosystem and taking away Android users' ability to sideload, when the reality is F-Droid arbitrarily enforces silly rules across their store all the same, just like Google does. The bottom line is developers ought to be the ones with the means of distribution, not how it is delivered with a filter or modified with some sort of app signatures like F-Droid is. And also, I know someone's going to bring up, well, why don't you try downloading the APKs from GitHub or GitLab directly? While I believe this is slightly better, unfortunately, I don't think this is the answer. App stores are necessary because they provide just an overall better user experience, but just not when they act as the arbiter of what can or cannot be published. The goal of app stores should be publish quality apps first and foremost, not enforce some nerd's philosophy. While F-Droid isn't the only alternative app store on Android, they're just the one with the largest app volume. But there is some good news, and we're starting to see the beginnings of stores like Crescent, which implement better security controls and don't have the weird open source stipulations that on their own applications. The downside is that they just are getting started, and they're also having the same sort of sustainability problems that F-Droid might. But unfortunately, talking about other app stores is probably a sign that this has been going on too long. I should probably put the camera down. So if you'd like to hear me complain more about Android, why don't you go leave a like on this video. Leave a like on this video if you would like me to go through all of the stupid little ways you can download and scrape silly little files off of GitHub for your Android device. And if you're an iPhone user who don't get the option of using alternative app stores, don't worry, I got some special things cooked up for you guys too. And if you'd like to hear more about what I do, you can always visit my website, trafotin.com. If you visit my website, you get access to a full transcript, as well as the sources that you've seen in this video, and then you can know that I'm not pulling things out of my rear end. And if you'd like to support the work that I do, leave a like on the video below, subscribe, and if you'd like to financially support me, you can do so via Patreon, YouTube memberships, or cryptocurrency. And that is going to be all for me, and stay out of trouble, stay classy, and I hope Android doesn't become less open than it is right now.